Okay, we're delighted to present our next session on enabling AI innovation to advance national health priorities. Unfortunately, Joe Chiarzanzelli, our NIA program scientist for the AITC Coordinating Center, could not be here today unexpectedly. So the session will be moderated by Ben Marlin, who's professor in the Manning College of Information and Computer Science at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he directs the Robust and Efficient Machine Learning Lab, and he is also co-PI of Mass AITC. Ben?
All right, thank you, Rose. Just give me a little second here to get set up. I'm going to invite the panelists just to come up and grab a seat. I think I'm going to moderate from over here, if that's okay. As Rose was mentioning, I'm subbing in for Joe today, who wasn't able to make it. So I'm going to rely on Joe's notes. He did a great job preparing all the materials for the session and doing the organization. So I'll be leveraging that material. So as Rose mentioned, I'm a professor of computer science at UMass Amherst. My research area is machine learning. I'm a co-PI on Mass AITC, one of the A2 member organizations. For the session today, the topic is enabling AI innovation to advance national health priorities. In the discussion, we'll aim to touch on several themes, including active implementation of AI technologies, operational progress, scaling efforts, and outcomes for older adults and caregivers. I'm going to begin just by giving a very brief introduction of our three panelists. We'll then invite the panelists to give some more details through opening remarks, and we'll move into moderated discussion based on Joe's original material. So to begin, I'll introduce Dr. Nora Connor. Nora is a data scientist and federal health technology expert who serves as co-lead for the Advancing Chronic Care with Effective Scalable Solutions model at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services Innovation Center. She previously served as the Director of Data Science and AI at Apt Global, where she drove the organization's AI strategy and technical delivery for federal clients. She holds a PhD in computer science from the University of Colorado. Next, Dr. Rafid Fadul. Dr. Fadul is the inaugural Chief Medical Officer for the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, or ARPA-H. He's a board-certified clinician in internal medicine, pulmonary disease, and critical care. He spent the last decade building and scaling companies at the intersection of clinical care delivery and digital health solutions prior to joining ARPA-H. He holds an MD from George Washington University as well as an MBA from Johns Hopkins University. And lastly, Dr. Michael Morgan. Dr. Morgan is a project manager and emerging science and technology advisor at the US Food and Drug Administration. He works in the Office of Regulatory and Emerging Science, within the Office of the Chief Scientist, within the Office of the Commissioner. Dr. Morgan currently co-leads a team of experts from across the FDA in developing ELSA, the FDA's first enterprise generative AI tool. Dr. Morgan completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the US Naval Research Laboratory, and received his graduate degree in biochemistry from the University of Maryland, College Park. So with those brief introductions, I'll turn it over to the panelists to give a little bit more detail on their background, their current roles, before we dig into questions. So let's start with Dr. Connor.
All right, you can call me Nora. Nice to be here. Very exciting time. As mentioned, I'm at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation. So the Innovation Center is really focused on improving quality of care and reducing costs of healthcare by testing and evaluating different interventions and sort of different models of delivering healthcare. So I've been at CMMI for all of 4 months. It's very exciting to be at the Innovation Center under the leadership of Director Abe Sutton. I'm also sort of taking credit a little bit today for a model that really predated my time at the Innovation Center. So serving as the model lead for access, and Tom actually sort of prefaced a little bit the access model, but I am going to talk about that a little bit. It is one of the flagship models for the Innovation Center and for CMS in general to enable digital health organizations and tech-enabled care solutions to reach the Medicare population. So this is really the efforts of Jacob Schiff and Abe Sutton to figure out ways to empower these organizations to participate in original Medicare and create a sort of a different pathway for organizations to get payment for outcomes rather than activities. So under original Medicare, under fee-for-service, since we are essentially a very large health insurance company, most of what we can do to sort of make changes and improve care for people is to change the incentives. So what the access model is trying to do is incentivize outcomes, so clinical metrics, clinically validated quality metrics for patients enrolled in access, rather than trying to sort of pay for it directly, and giving healthcare providers a lot more flexibility in the different ways that they can deliver care. So I'll just sort of preface with that and then let the others introduce themselves.
All right, thank you. Dr. Fadul.
Everybody, Rafid Fadul. The first chief medical officer at ARPA-H. ARPA-H is, I feel like, the most obscure and unknown agency within HHS, although I think it's one of the coolest, no disrespect. So ARPA-H is a breakthrough research organization. We're a little bit different than our colleagues at NIH. NIH really kind of, they advance the body of knowledge incrementally at the edges of science fact. We kind of live in the world of science fiction, where we're looking at breakthroughs and like the big what ifs. We operate under different funding mechanisms. So what I mean by that is we operate under what's called other transactions, or OTs, as opposed to grants, where we just kind of like write the check and we'll see in a few years when you publish paper. This is much different in that it's milestone-based funding, and it's very hands-on. Our program managers, which is I think it's the worst job title, but it's actually the best job. So the program managers are the ones who kind of come up with these audacious ideas, and they fund, typically $150 million for a program, and they're actively managing it with their performers, which is ARPA lingo for the people who actually get the money and do the work, and they manage them pretty actively. So it gives us the ability to double down on things that are working, kill ideas that are not bearing fruit, and really do it in real time. We fancy ourselves a time machine, compressing what would ordinarily take decades and doing it in 3 to 5 years. So I think I got the highlights of ARPA-H. I am curious, like, how many people have heard of ARPA-H prior to this? Oh, so this is a better room. Most times it's like less than 50% when I'm speaking, so this is exciting. Mike, you're on deck.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, one of my former colleagues at FDA, Arun Skandaraj, is now working at ARPA-H. Him and I kind of kicked off some of the AI strategy over at the Food and Drug Administration. I'm Mike Morgan. I work at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. We regulate 20 cents on every dollar of U.S. GDP. That happens across drugs, devices, biologics, veterinary medicine, tobacco products. It's a large organization with a lot of really intelligent, dedicated people. AI is something that is in every facet of what we do, especially just with the emergence of the technologies coming onto the market in all of those product areas. My particular role in AI has kind of stemmed from standing up strategy within the inside of FDA, so the enterprise, and also building enterprise AI applications at the agency to be leveraged by the regulators, the inspectors, all of the folks doing the regulatory work at the agency, providing them the tools and the resources to help them do their jobs, to make their jobs easier. Yeah, and that's pretty much about it. I think FDA is pretty well known with what we do, and we're kind of in the fabric of America.
It's 100% show of hands, if you ask them.
It's a pleasure to be here as well, so thank you for having me.
All right, very good. Thank you all. So we're going to start with some opening questions around the status of AI deployment programs and initiatives within your organizations. And maybe, again, Michael, we can start with you. How many people heard about the ELSA deployment when it was announced last summer? A few people. I definitely noticed when it was announced. So maybe we could start there and just talk about what that program is, what the sort of aims are, what the use cases are, and then, again, we'll go to the other panelists for other initiatives in their organizations.
So, a lot of people ask, where did you get the name ELSA? About a year ago, maybe 100 plus experts from across the FDA came together in what is affectionately called the conclave at this point. We packed into a room and we started to kind of formulate what an enterprise AI application would look like within an organization like FDA. And luckily, when we kind of all joined in this room, the Center for Devices had already kind of started their journey in building an enterprise, well, at that time, a center tool. It quickly kind of gained initial adoption and excitement by the folks within the Center for Drugs, and I think there was a recognition of value immediately, and a determination was made by Marty McCary, our commissioner, and Jeremy Walsh, under the direction of the chief AI officer at HHS at the time, to develop and expand and scale this technology across the agency. And so over the last, not even year, over the last several months, we've built ELSA, which I can't remember. Actually, it's kind of funny because I think, like, we were just talking about names and someone kind of pitched this ELSA idea and everybody was like, yes, that's what we're going to call it. We built this tool as part of a team of contractors and staff with expertise in regulation, medical, scientific, data science, legal, ethical, and we, have essentially built a tool that's, I think it was reported late last year, that has reached about 70% adoption across the enterprise. And part of the success of that has been taking a very product-focused mindset by making sure that the end user is the one who's kind of driving the direction of what they are seeing as valuable, what they are considering as valuable. And so we've kind of rapidly prototyped, rapidly iterated, rapidly versioned iterations of ELSA. It goes back into the hands of the staff. We allow them and encourage them to provide feedback on what features or recommendations they would like to see in the tool, and where improvements can be made, and we incorporate that into the next version. And we've done that repeatedly over cycles of about 6 to 8 weeks. The general kind of, approach has been, think really, really big, but start small. Always have a sense of urgency. So you don't need to rush, but just have a sense of urgency. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our tool is in the hands of the people, the regulators, the inspectors, so that they can do their jobs more efficiently, so they can do it more easily, and that translates into better public health.
All right, thank you. Nora, Rafid, would you like to jump in on AI initiatives in your orgs?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, again, we're doing breakthrough innovations, and I don't think there's a single program that we have that doesn't somehow incorporate AI throughout it, whether it's around drug discovery or care delivery. So I could talk about a whole host of them. The one I think I'll highlight though is something we recently announced called the Advocate Program. Anyone heard of that? couple hands, yeah. It was going to be called ELSA, but someone took the name. So the advocate program is the one I think is super unique for a variety of reasons. So essentially what it is it's an agentic AI tool used to treat heart failure, right? Which is a very expensive comorbidity in the United States, leads to lots of readmissions. And interestingly enough, humans do a really terrible job of managing heart failure. So less than 3% of patients, this is a well-trodden path of the care model for heart failure, and less than 3% of patients actually get the right medications at the right doses for their conditions. And so, and then you compound that with the fact that we have this huge shortage of cardiologists across the country, and so we are in dire need of a tool. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, is because, like, why are there no agentic tools already? Well, because there's actually no pathway for this, right? And this is where it gets really interesting, because we're co-developing this with the FDA. And this is where it gets, like, this is where the magic happens, right? Because, and this is kind of part of the mandate of ARPA-H, because we do things that industry won't do because it's too risky, right? Like, no venture capitalist firm is going to fund a company that says, oh, we're going to be the first agentic AI tool. Great, with what pathway? Because it doesn't exist, right? And so we are building this offering, this agentic AI for heart failure, and it really is the tip of the spear, right? So, and we're doing it in co-development with the FDA. Like, that piece, I think, is almost as important as the technology itself, right? Because not only are we doing the agentic AI, but we're actually building a kind of a proprietary supervisory layer to make sure that the AI is actually good, not just today, but in 2 years and 3 years down the road, right? And this is a model where, I mean, and I learned this from private sector. You can have a brilliant idea, but execution matters more. And if you can't find a way to bring it to market, then you just have a brilliant idea that sits on a shelf and doesn't really do the impact, right? And when we measure ROI, we're measuring it in lives impacted, lives saved. And so it doesn't mean much if you can't get it out to market. And so we feel really, really proud of all the work that FDA is doing in co-developing this and the pathway. And because what's going to happen is, like, we will be the tip of the spear, and then, God willing, this goes through and it's a success. There's going to be hundreds of other companies looking for pathways of approval through now a proven pathway at FDA for every other disease state, right? And this has the potential of being one of the first deflationary tools in healthcare, I think, ever, aside from the generic medicines, right? So I think that's the one I'm probably the most excited about. I like to brag about that one. But we have AI woven throughout everything that we do.
Great, thank you. Nora.
Yeah, so we are also partnering with FDA, just to continue on the theme. So right, as I mentioned, the access model that is coming from CMS, it's focused on figuring out how to pay for outcomes, and we are really focusing on chronic disease in the Medicare population. So early cardio-kidney metabolic syndrome that includes prediabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, as well as sort of more advanced diabetes with cardio-kidney metabolic syndrome. Also musculoskeletal pain, so chronic pain, and then finally behavioral health, so depression and anxiety. Those are sort of the 4 clinical tracks that we're tracking and offering these payments, which are significantly below market value. So we released our payments back in February. Luckily, our applications did not slow down. They actually picked up, so we're very relieved. But this is also sort of an important part of, I think, what CMS is trying to do, which is create pathways for paying for outcomes rather than paying for a certain set of activities. The outcomes here can be achieved through AI. And I'll just echo something that Mary said in the last session, which is this is the first time in my life that I've had so many digital health companies and venture capital firms sort of knocking down my door. It's just been kind of nonstop. There's a ton of really incredible tools. There's a ton of pent-up demand for digital health interventions, for digital health ideas, for chatbots. And some of these have also done their own randomized controlled trials. Some of them have done those in Europe. Some of them have done them, with hospital systems. But they haven't found a way to sort of enter the larger health insurance market. And so that's what Access does by partnering with the FDA. On the same day that we announced the Access model, we also announced the FDA Tempo pilot. And this is a pathway for organizations that are participating in Access to also get regulatory basically like a regulatory pathway from the FDA for approval for these devices. So that means that, you know, if you have your chatbot, if you have your wearable, if you have your device that you want to use, but it doesn't have FDA approval, you can apply to the Tempo pilot and use the access model as a way to collect real-world data that we will then share back and forth between CMS and FDA, and it provides basically this regulatory pathway for these tools for software as a medical device, which again, really important aspect here. And I think I'll just sort of double down on the deflationary piece. I think that's really key here. You know, payment rates, like healthcare costs have just gotten to an extreme level, and we have to figure out a way to provide care, meet the need for all of the people that need healthcare, and including in the aging population, which we heard was going to be something like 95 million by 2040. We have to find a way to scale that. And I think one of the nice things about the access model is that, again, we're not telling you what to do. We're just asking you to hit your outcome measures. And once you hit your outcome measures, then we will release full payment. So you are financially incentivized to help your patients lower their blood pressure, control their A1C, bring down their weight. These are the different measures that we're using. Also, you know, bring down your depression score on a validated PHQ-9 measure. Once you've hit those targets, then we release the payment. And the rates are low. And so the only way to really hit those payment rates and, you know, make that model work is to embed technology in your solution. And that can look however you want it to look. We don't have to create a bunch of CPT codes or HCPCS codes for how you're going to embed AI in your care delivery model. That's up to you. All you have to worry about is helping people control their chronic conditions. And then we also provide a payment pathway. Once people have controlled their conditions and are at target, we continue to pay. So if you are able to keep somebody at, you know, within control for their A1C, within 120 over 80 for your blood pressure, right? Those we'll continue to pay for prevention, which is another really, I think, really important piece here.
All right, great. Thank you. So I think across those responses, we heard a range of different kinds of applications, some focused internally, supporting processes like review at FDA, others that are clinician focused. Within the AITC program, we're putting a lot of AI-enabled technologies directly in front of patients. So there's lots of different use cases and lots of different kinds of tools. What I'd like to touch on next, beyond sort of regulatory and sort of payment issues, barriers. So what are you seeing in terms of barriers to adoption of technologies, either inside your organizations or by the stakeholders to which you'd like these technologies to be picked up? Maybe we'll start with Michael again.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to the executives at the agency, they are really focused on adoption. You can build an amazing tool, but if nobody uses it, it's kind of worthless. And so how do you build an amazing tool and get people to use it? When you look at like a general technology adoption curve, you kind of have like, it's kind of a bell curve. You have kind of the early adopters all the way to the laggards and kind of that in between. One of the things that we've really focused on is meeting the end user, meeting the staff where they are, providing them a number of different resources for training, whether it's agency-wide training where maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people from across the agency will log on and someone will walk them through utilizing ELSA with different use cases that may be specific to their regulatory work, or even something as simple as this is how you take a document and summarize it, or this is how you leverage ELSA to generate an email that's more sympathetic or empathetic. All the way to the most complex application where we have internal staff using ELSA to generate code, to write Python applications, to do analytical data analysis and visualization work. So with FDA, you have a breadth of experts, a breadth of generalists, and how do you create training opportunities and information exchange for them. And so we start with everything as simple as, 101, and we think about, everything as advanced as 601. So from your generalist, like freshman level course to your advanced graduate level course. In every discussion, and we have these discussions all the time, we think about how do we not only maintain the adoption, but increase the user satisfaction. So it's not just about how many people are using the tool, but it's like, are they getting satisfaction and value out of that tool? And that's one of the other things that we kind of focus on. There's always this concept of making sure that, the value is there. So if people are using the tool, are they generating value? Is it helping them do their jobs? Are they doing it faster? Are they doing it with more satisfaction? These are the type of things that we kind of think about from an adoption perspective. And I'll say for those who are not kind of in the field of or in the practice of building IT solutions, where you have adoption at a rate of 70 to 80% across an enterprise like that, that's it's phenomenal. It means that what you've done is built a tool that people find value. And the hardest part is satisfying their every need, want, and desire, making sure that as the technology evolves so rapidly that you're incorporating those type of novel and emerging features or functions into your tool. We never stop building. We never stop listening. We are always out there asking the staff, what do you like? What do you not like? And then building that into the next iteration. And to your point, we're moving into that agentic phase, moving from generative AI into the agentic phase. What I'll tell you from a regulator's perspective, just to kind of wrap up here, is that in order to effectively regulate these technologies, you ideally really want to be able to know how they work. You want to be able to know how to use them. And so it's not just about giving people a tool. It's about educating them on the type of technologies that they're ultimately going to be regulating. And so when you have that hands-on application, that hands-on use, it makes your knowledge base and your experience that much more comprehensive to make better science-based, data-informed decisions on the safety and efficacy of products.
Great.
So I'll just say, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of delivering these tools also to the public, right? So I think there's a perception, this is, National Institute of Aging, there's a perception that older Americans have more difficulty with technology. Embracing technology, there's more concerns. As somebody who is married to a little bit of a cybersecurity conspiracy theorist, I can tell you that my parents are much more tech savvy and open to technology than he is. So I think one of the things that we sort of have to overcome as a barrier is a little bit of bias that older Americans are not interested in engaging with AI, that they are resistant. What we've heard from the wearable developers, the device developers, the technologists that we've been meeting with is that they don't see that at all. They actually see more uptake of these devices, which they're primarily at present not delivering through Medicare or Medicaid, but they are delivering to patients through commercial insurance, private insurance, commercial plans. What they're seeing is that uptake is actually greater in these older populations, and so I think that's actually an important barrier to think about. Is when we're developing these tools, that's don't write off a population just because of bias. I think the other thing I'll say is there's always lots of concern, and we've certainly heard some concern for this model around rural healthcare. That's always a big concern. There's some great solutions coming out where people are using rather than Wi-Fi empowered or Wi-Fi connected devices, actually cellular connected devices, different options so I think it's also really important as we're thinking about these tools and technologies supporting people aging in place, that we also think about different technologies that allow them to connect. So if it's a cellular connected blood pressure cuff, for instance, that's one of the assumptions that we make in the model. And we also provide some additional payment through the access model for giving, for patient education. So helping patients set up these devices, helping them, get connected to their technology, getting some tech support. That's, I think, really important for overcoming some of those barriers.
I think so. I'll tackle the question from kind of the provider business side, right? I think one of the barriers is, I would say, clarity and transparency around a regulatory path. Right, we have talked about that, and so we'll belabor that. And I think we're actively solving that. The other piece, like downstream, is, well, now I got it approved, will I get it paid for, right? So that's the other thing everyone asks about. And so these are the questions that get from any venture-backed company or any company that's looking to be an entrant into the marketplace. They have to consider commercialization and that path, and so that's certainly there. I think the other thing, though, is really like change management. And what I mean by that is I'm one of probably the few doctors. This may be provocative, it may be obvious, I don't know, but I don't think there's really a role for doctors in the future. So sorry if you guys are med students. But what I mean by that is the technology is improving at such a rapid pace. And we're seeing this in other areas where like thought workers are the need is frankly isn't there, and the rate of improvement of the technology is so good. It's so good. People were first talking about ChatGPT in October of 23. It was 3 years ago. Not even, right? Like, and look at where we are today. And so the rapidness of the change is just it's unfathomable, honestly. And there's an element of trust or mistrust, I should say. And I think about autonomous vehicles, right? So when there's like a Waymo that crashes, everyone freaks out. It's all autonomous vehicles. And then when there's a bad outcome of someone who uses ChatGPT, it's obviously we can't use AI. But the reality is the Waymo is 1 million times safer than all the humans who crash their cars all day long. And and ChatGPT had one very public bad outcome. But we have terrible outcomes, unfortunately. Like, let's be honest about it. Like, unfortunately, the state of healthcare in the U.S. is not great, and so there's tremendous opportunity to improve and to leverage technology as a way to get better. We tend to think that we are the heroes of the story, but maybe actually, there's an opportunity to lean in on this. And I feel like I'm probably saying things that are, reeling off the edge here, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but. I think that the element here is really about change management. Is how do you get people comfortable with it, and how do you get them to accept that the next 20 years will not look like the past 20 years, and that we can all say with definitive certainty. It will be dramatically different.
Great, thank you. Very provocative indeed. All right, so the next item that I wanted to touch on, just dovetailing with this last point, this last set of points, I think everyone has heard stories, as just noted, around ChatGPT, hallucinations, confabulations. I think with the sort of foray into agentic AI, there are new open source tools that have become available just since sort of December of this year. How many people have heard of OpenClaw? Okay, good. That's impressive. Thank you. So there are stories of people deploying some of these agentic systems and having them wipe all their emails. I think that was a story out of Meta, and things like this, right? So in terms of risks, and then I think in looking at deploying these systems, the idea that there would be no risk is not realistic, as is the case in most domains. The question of risk mitigation or safety monitoring, I think, is a more appropriate context to think about these systems. So thoughts on safety concerns, how you're thinking about risk assessment or risk monitoring, safety monitoring in the systems that you're developing and deploying.
Yeah, this is a big ticket item. One thing that we haven't touched on, which kind of relates to this is, having governance in place. And so, it kind of goes to the concept of just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so, how do you take an enterprise-wide system and build in governance and guardrails that kind of reduce the risk of misuse? We, as part of our team, we have security professionals that sit there with us, kind of just observing and providing input on the development of the tool. Most recently, we've been thinking about kind of expanding that kind of security aspect to a broader red teaming type of approach where we bring in experts from across the agency that may be technical, they may be scientific, they may be regulatory, and they help evaluate the safety and security of the system. We also, in line with that governance piece, so there's kind of the technology folks that, they're coding, they're building, they're prototyping, they're testing. We do a lot of testing and evaluation of the system. That governance piece is kind of, in alignment or adjoined. We have an internal AI council that looks at what type of best practices we need in place, what type of guardrails we need in place, and then how do we kind of implement that? Is it an internal guidance, an internal policy? Is it guardrails within a system prompt? So we're always thinking about security, because when you regulate 20 cents on the dollar of GDP, and think about all the product submissions that come in from outside of the agency to the inside, that data, it contains, PII, PHI, it contains trademarks, it contains, trade secrets, it contains very proprietary information from pharmaceutical companies. We want to make sure that that information stays inside the agency, is secure within the agency. And, whether you're using AI or Microsoft Office 365, the same concepts apply. We want to make sure that our systems are hardened, they're secure, our information is stored and secured appropriately, and that doesn't change with AI. It actually gets more complex, it gets a little bit harder. So we're constantly always thinking about security by design, always thinking about what risks that we run, whether they're token cost, token consumption risk. If you deploy a model and then the staff adopts that model, but there's not enough budget to keep that model running, then that's also a security risk. It's a financial risk. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about. It's not just kind of spinning up a model and then just putting it out there. It's governance, guidance, cost, security, ethical considerations, policy considerations, and all thinking about the end user and making sure that we're protecting them and protecting, our sponsors' data and protecting ultimately, the safety and efficacy of our products that are going out there and being consumed by the public.
My answer is I just let the FDA do it. We outsource. I will say something else, though, which I think is important in this space is, patient safety is always tantamount. The other thing that's really exciting about this model, the access model, is we are pushing everybody into health information exchanges within a year of the model launch. And so this is a way for CMS to collect clinical data, to collect outcomes data, to collect utilization data. And of course, because we are ultimately the healthcare payer, we get all of those claims. So if you go to an emergency room, we're going to see it. And I'll just say CMS is making a big push right now. I don't know if you've all seen any of the announcements about the claims core request for information, but essentially CMS is going to overhaul the entire payment system that has been in place for decades at this point, and is frankly, very slow and brittle and constrained by regulations. And what that enables us to do then is to basically have some of that safety monitoring happening through the flow of data. So we can monitor it from the payer side. Also, if it's in a health information exchange, a primary care provider can monitor that data as well, which is fantastic because we also have, through TEFCA, push notifications. So, and we have agentic AI. And so you start being able to have these workflows where, oh, my patient's in the hospital because, their blood pressure is spiking. That's now being alerted to your primary care provider, or, being alerted to your cardiologist, and they are knowing in real time that that's happening. So it's really exciting in that sense that, TEFCA and sort of this movement towards health information exchanges, having everybody use the same standard data across the whole system is empowering everyone in the ecosystem to have that real-time insight into patient safety.
I think the TLDR is that the quality of the output is paramount, right? And zooming in on the advocate example I gave earlier, it's not just that you have the agentic AI tool, congratulations, right? But there's the supervisory layer that goes on top of it to, in fact, make sure that it's doing the job today, next year, in 5 years, so that the fidelity remains high throughout the life of this tool, right? And zooming out, again, I kind of said already that AI is, it's this, we kind of talk about it as this like kind of homogenous thing, but it's woven into everything that we do at ARPA-H. Whether it's drug discovery, trying to do phase 1s in silico to expedite trials, et cetera. And if the quality of the data, if the fidelity of it is ever in question, then the whole house of cards comes down, right? And so it absolutely needs to be it should be the top thing on everyone's mind, frankly. And another small but important example is we have another project that we're doing called CARE, which essentially looks at the fidelity of chatbots, right? So we talked about hallucinations. If you look at just the medical subset of ChatGPT queries, 50 million a day, I think was the number that they cited not so long ago. There's a rather high number of hallucinations, and it varies depending on like the type of, if it's a medication question or a treatment question, et cetera. And we're actually working to solve that, right? So that we've gotten that down to close to single-digit % as today, and trending towards asymptotically towards 0. So we're getting to a place where we are making it better for industry, then eventually we'll open source it so everyone can have the ability of that. But the short story is it has to be on the top of everyone's mind, and that should be like number 1 on the list. But I also outsource to FDA as well.
All right. Thank you. So we're just about out of time. So I'll leave with one final question. So in terms of the intersection of AI and care for older adults and those with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, what are people most excited about? What opportunity, maybe in one sentence, do you see that you're most excited about for that particular intersection? Maybe we can start with Nora on that question.
Somebody else. The question is, what's the most exciting innovation in this space of AI?
I'll buy you time. So I'm actually super excited about AI as it applies to drug discovery, because this is not like the one that everyone talks about, but man, oh man, I think we will see the cure for Alzheimer's in the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to see the cure for many degenerative disorders, neurodegenerative disorders in the next 5 to 10 years, and it is purely due to the applications of AI in the context of drug discovery.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I'll go here. There's kind of 2 areas where I've been really interested. I think it's that intersection of AI and quantum computing. That's really exciting. It's emerging, like in its most infant stages. Not sure we're there yet in terms of actual application, but we're getting very close. And the other thing is this kind of concept of physical AI, world models, where it moves from kind of digital into the digital physical realm, and I think that's really an exciting emerging area.
Okay, I got my thoughts together. I'll say I think one of the things that's most exciting is pushing the prediction window further forward. So I've seen some really interesting products that have been demonstrated that, start being able to predict whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's gout, whether it's, issues with neuropathy, and being able to predict those much sooner. I think I'm really excited about how the models will continue to improve in that aspect so that people can intervene sooner.
All right, well, thank you all very much. Let's give the panelists a round of applause. Thank you.